Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 1, Text 1. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kimakuruvata Sanjaya.
Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?
Text 2. Sanjaya Uvacha Drishtva tu Pandavanekam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam Raja Vachanamabravit.
Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formations by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words.
Text 3. Paschaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishena Dhimata.
O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada.
Text 4. Atra Shura Maheshwasa Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi Yudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha.
Here in this army are many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata, and Drupada.
Text 5. Drishtaketuschekitanaha Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojascha Shaibyascha Narapungavaha.
There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Dhritarashtra, Chekitana, Kasiraja, Purujit, Kuntibhoja, and Saibya.
Text 6. Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamaujaschcha Viryavan Saubhadro Draupadeyascha Sarvayeva Maharataha.
There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
Text 7. Asmakam tu visishtaye tani bodha dvijottama nayaka mama sainyasya sanyartam tan bravimite.
But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force.
Text 8. Bhavan bhishmascha karnascha kripascha samitim jayah ashwathama vikarnascha saumadatti stataiva cha.
There are personalities like you, Bhisma, Karna, Kripa, Asvathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Burishrava, who are always victorious in battle.
Text 9. Anne cha bahavaha shura madharte tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharanaha sarve yuddha visharadaha.
There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science.
Text 10. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma virakshitam paryaptam tudame tesham balam bhima virakshitam.
Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhisma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhisma, is limited.
Text 11. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu यथा भागमवस्थिताः भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि.
All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bisma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army.
Text 12. तस्य सञ्जनयन् हर्षं कुरु वृद्धः पितामहः सिंहनादं विनोद्योच्चै शङ्खं दद्मौ प्रतापवान्.
Then Bisma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy.
Text 13. ततः शङ्काश्च भैर्यश्च पणवानकगोमुखाः सहसैवाभ्यहन्यन्तः सा शब्दस्तु मुलोऽभवत्.
After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous.
Text 14. ततः श्वेतैर्हये युक्ते महति स्यन्दने स्थितौ माधवः पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्कौ प्रदत्मतुः.
On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells.
Text 15. पाञ्चजन्यं ऋषिकेशो देवदत्तं धनञ्जयः पौण्ड्रं दद्मौ महाशङ्कं भीमकर्मावृकोदरः.
Lord Krishna blew his conch shell, called Panchajayana. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell, called Paundra.
Text 16 to 18. अनन्तविजयं राजा कुन्तीपुत्रो युधिष्ठिरः नकुलः सह देवश्च सुघोषमणिपुष्पकौ काशश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च सात्यकीश्च पराजितः द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वशः पृथिवीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहुः शङ्कान् दद्मुः पृथक् पृथक्.
King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Sughosa and Manipuspaka. That great archer, the king of Kasi, the great fighter Sikhandi, Drhasta, Dyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells.
Text 19. सघोषोधार्तराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि व्यदारयत् नभश्च पृथिवीं चैव तुमुलोऽभ्यनुनादयन्.
The blowing of his different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra.
Text 20. अतः व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते.
At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the son of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words.
Text 21 to 22. अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युत यावदेतान्निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे.
Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here who desire to fight, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms.
Text 23. Yosyamananavekshekham yayetetra samagataha dhatarashtrasya durbuddhe yuddhe priyachikirshavaha.
Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra.
Text 24. Sanjaya uvacha evamukto rishikesho gudakeshena bharata senayorubhayormadhye स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमम्.
Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So sorry for any mistakes. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Hare Krishna. Dandavad pranams.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Please forgive me. There were lots of very long, difficult names there, which I couldn't pronounce correctly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just felt the recitation was so nice that I didn't want it to stop. Prabhavati Mataji, your pronunciation was so good. And Anna Mataji, don't worry about any mistakes. You read very nice also. It was honestly, I meant it. It was so nice. I just wanted it to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavad pranams.
Wonderful pranams.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So welcome, dear devotees. My name is Vrindavan Chandra Das. I may be meeting some of you all for the first time since we started our new sessions, beginning again from chapter 1. So it's my pleasure to be in your association. I normally recite to facilitate on Sundays and Mondays. And if any of you are joining us for the first time today, a warm welcome to you. We recite a chapter a day of Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes the chapter is long. We recite half of the chapter and then do the other half the next month. And then we normally have some discussion from around 8 o'clock to 8:30, and then from 8:30 to 8:45, there'll be questions. So thank you very much. So today we shall be discussing in more detail text number 2. But before that, we invoke auspiciousness on our session and in our consciousness by reciting the Mangala Charanam prayers. You are also welcome to recite the prayers behind muted mics. For those of you all who are unfamiliar with the prayers, if you go to the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, you will see the introduction is on page number 1. And Srila Prabhupada starts his introduction with the recitation of the Mangala Charanam prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Jena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dishatarine. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we shall be reading text number 2. Just to say, some people may feel we've read chapter 18. Now we're coming back to chapter 1. And you may feel a bit out of sync. We should never feel like that. Once Srila Prabhupada was with his disciples, and Prabhupada asked the devotees to read from a particular book. And the devotee was reading, he asked Srila Prabhupada, where shall we read? Yesterday we were here, shall we go back to the beginning, or where shall we read? And Srila Prabhupada said, the words of Krishna and about Krishna are like a rasagula. Wherever you bite, it's sweet. So in the same way, the instructions of Lord Krishna, wherever we bite, wherever we taste, it's all sweet. So it's no difficulty, even if we go back and we start, although we finished the 18th chapter. So text number 2. Sanjaya uvacha drishvatu pandavanikam vyodham durayadannastadha archayam archyam upasangam yo raja vajanam abravit. Word for word synonyms. Sanjaya uvacha. Sanjaya said, Drishtva, after seeing, 2, but Pandava Anikam, the soldiers of the Pandavas, Vyudham, arranged in a military phalanx. Duryodhanaha, King Duryodhana. Tada, at that time, Archaryam, the teacher. Upasangam, approaching. Raja, the king. Vachanam, words. Abravit, spoke. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage. And Sanjaya could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. Sanjaya wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus assured him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son, Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician. But Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas. So, very interesting verse. So this verse is being spoken by Sanjaya to the king Dhritarashtra. And as we know, Dhritarashtra was blind. Sanjaya was the disciple of Vyasadeva. Being blessed by Vyasadeva, Srila Prabhupada mentions that he was blessed with a transcendental television. Although he was sat before Dhritarashtra, he could still observe all that was happening in the battlefield. So after having been asked by Dhritarashtra that the armies had assembled on the battlefield, what did they do? So this is the first response from Sanjaya, this verse. And in this verse, he explains that Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, he approached his teacher, Dronacharya, and he spoke the following words. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives us insights into the reason why Dhritarashtra had asked that specific question. Would anyone like to say what were some of Dhritarashtra's thoughts when he asked the question to Sanjaya, which Srila Prabhupada explains? Anyone likes to say? Hare Krishna Puja Mataji.
One thing was that he was doubtful about his son's performance, but still he felt that they would win somehow. But here
Yes.
he had a doubt anyway, and also he feared that Krishna, which also being a Dharma Bhumi, Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas, so it's likely that they are going to win anyway. So he was in a double mind actually, but he still wanted his sons to win in spite of knowing the odds that it may not happen.
Yes, he was worried, he was concerned. There's also, you gave two very nice reasons, Puja Mataji. There's also another reason he was so concerned. Anyone?
It was being, sorry.
I think it's because of the place where they were assembled at Kurukshetra, which was a sacred place, and their minds could be influenced there.
Exactly. So he was conscious that Kurukshetra was a holy place. He was also conscious that he and his sons were irreligious. So when irreligious people gather at a holy place and fight against religious people, we know what the outcome was going to be. So being conscious of all these different reasons, he was concerned. And he was looking now for Sanjaya to speak in a way that reassured him that everything was going to be all right. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. But not only was he materially blind, but he was also spiritually blind. So these sections of the verses from verse number 2 to 11, which we will be reading in the forthcoming weeks, the main theme here is Duryodhana's fear and his diplomacy in describing the armies. You'll see all of this will come out. And Srila Prabhupada also alludes to the political nature of Duryodhana. So just a bit of history into how Dhritarashtra was born blind. We know a bit about the Kuru dynasty. We have King Shantanu, who had Ganga as his wife, who bore Bhishma, and then King Shantanu, being attracted by the daughter of a fisherman, Satyavati. He begot two sons, Chitrangad and Vichitravirya. And we also read from the Mahabharata that Satyavati, before a marriage, she begot Vyas. Through the sage Parasara Muni. So from the Mahabharata, we also read from the history that Vichitravirya, before that, Chitrangad, who was one of the sons of Satyavati, he was killed in the battle before he got married. Actually, Bhishma, he had taken the vow that he would never be king. So he actually arranged that Chitrangad would be the first heir to the throne. But he died in the battle even before he could get married. So Vichitravirya, he was crowned king. But unfortunately, Vichitravirya, he also died before he could bear any sons. And he had two wives. First wife was Ambika, and the second wife was Ambalika. So when he died childless, Satyavati, first obviously she approached Bhishma with a niyoj. So the principle of niyoj, he would help beget children. But Bhishma, he had taken the vow and he was not willing to do that. So she approached the son through a first marriage, Vyas. And this is the same Veda Vyas, the sage and the author of Mahabharata. So Veda Vyas, he was approached to help Ambika conceive a child. And through the union of Vyas and Ambika, Dhritarashtra was born. But we know that Vyas, he did not have very good-looking bodily features. He didn't have very good bodily features and facial features. So when Ambika saw Vyas during the time they were conceiving, she was horrified and she blocked her eyes. And when she blocked her eyes, it is said that is the reason that the child, the son that they conceived, was born blind. And there's some history about Vichitravirya, which we've just spoken about. And he was married to two of the daughters of the king of Kashi-Kasya, who was Ambika and Ambalika. And he loved his wives very much, and they both also adored him. But after 7 years, he fell ill and he passed away. So just some principles of niyoga. Some people may wonder, how this took place and how this fitted in with Dharma. So according to the Dharma Shastras, this principle of yoga, there were some very strict principles attached to this. So it was a dharmic principle, which was allowed. But these were some of the principles. The first principle was that the woman would agree for this conception only for the sake of rightfully having a child and not for any pleasure. Second, the child thus born would be considered the child of the husband, wife, and not that of the appointed man. So in this case, Vichitra, Virya, and Ambika, and not Vyas. Third, the appointed man would not seek any paternal relationship or attachment to this child in the future. And we see this very much displayed in the relationship between Vedavyas and Dhritarashtra. He did not seek any paternal relationship or attachment to Dhritarashtra. Fourth, to avoid misuse, a man was allowed a maximum of 3 times in this lifetime to be appointed in such a way. And we know in the case of Vyasadeva, he agreed to perform this act of niyoga simply because he was requested very earnestly by his mother, Satyavati. And the 5th principle, the act will be seen as that of dharma. Never will this act of niyoga be considered adharmic. And while doing so, the man and the wife will have only dharma in their mind and neither passion nor lust. The forefront of this act of niyoga was dharma. The man will do it as a help to the woman in the name of God, whereas the woman will accept it only to bear the child for herself and her husband. So in Kali Yuga, generally this principle of niyoga is not practiced, because these principles, as set out in the Dharma Shastra, it's very difficult to follow in Kali Yuga. And secondly is the consciousness of the citizens of Kali Yuga is not conducive. So this is the principle or the circumstances by which Dhritarashtra was born. So someone can understand, we ask the question, yes, I've seen by this incident, why Dhritarashtra was born materially blind? But what about spiritually? His father was the great sage Vedavyas. So surely he must have taken on the qualities of his father. So why is it that he couldn't take on at least the spiritual qualities of his father, Vyas? To try to understand this, maybe we can refer to the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where there's a description about the birth of King Vena. King Vena was very, very irreligious. And he was so irreligious that his father Anga was so disgusted that he left home. And Vena was so irreligious and cruel that all of the sages and the saints in the kingdom, they had him killed. So when Vidura was hearing this from Maitreya, he was very curious to know how a bad son can be born from a good king. How could such a saintly king as Anga, we read in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam about the wonderful qualities of a king, Anga. How is it? So Vidura, he asked this question and he posed it to Maitreya. And he was also curious at how the sages could curse a king, because the king is known as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Maitreya narrates the events that led to the birth of Vena. And then in the Bhagavatam, there is some description about how King Anga, he performed an Ashvamedha sacrifice, a yagya. And the demigods would not appear because it's essential during the Ashvamedha yagya that the demigods should appear. But they wouldn't appear. And then the priests informed King Anga that the demigods did not want to appear because Anga did not have a son. They said, you are sinless in this life, but due to a sin in your previous life, you did not have a son. So there were these events, but eventually he tried, for the sake of a son, the priest offered oblations to Lord Vishnu, and a person appeared from the fire altar carrying a golden pot of payasam. And this payasam was given to the queen Sunita, the wife of Anga. But Sunita, she was the daughter of Mrityu, the lord of death. So because of Sunita's lineage, King Vena was born out of this marriage of Anga and Sunita. So it is not necessary that the child or the son will take on the qualities of the father. There are many other factors which come into play, and these factors all affect the conception. So it would seem that in this case, it was the mother's consciousness that entered more into Dhritarashtra. So in this way, we see that the position of Dhritarashtra, and here we see description about Duryodhana, that after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, he was worried. And although he was the king, he still went to the commander of his forces, and the commander was Dronacharya. And very diplomatically, he questioned Dronacharya, and then he made certain points to Dronacharya, which will be discussed in the subsequent verses. In this way, we see there's a very, very nice setting to this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita in these verses. And we see the nature immediately of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. And immediately we get the inclination of what is going to be the outcome of this battle. So maybe I'll stop here. Maybe just one point I just thought about while I was reading this. You know, we normally start our prayers, Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So in all humility, we consider ourselves also being born in the darkness of ignorance. All of us are born in the darkest of ignorance. Just like the blindness of Dhritarashtra. We are also considered to be born blind, born ignorant. But by the mercy of the spiritual master, he opens our eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So in one sense, we can almost identify with the situation of Dhritarashtra, because we are also born spiritually blind. But by the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of the Guru Parampara, by submission, service, an inquiry to the Guru, our eyes can be opened. Dhritarashtra, he was very fortunate that his stepbrother was Vidura, a great devotee of Lord Krishna. And Vidura had repeatedly tried to instruct him, and Vidura was always favorably disposed towards Dhritarashtra. But unfortunately, being blinded by the affection of his children, he could not see the truth. And there is a description in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can all read, that eventually after finally, Dhritarashtra, he takes the advice of Vidura and he leaves home together with his wife Gandhari, and they dedicate themselves towards spiritual perfection in the end. So it took a very, very long time for Dhritarashtra to get some realization of what his real position was. So we'll stop here, dear devotees. If there are any questions, any comments, please feel free to ask, or reflections or corrections too.
Prabhuji, I got one question. I just want to ask you, can you display that graph? You just did it. And before that, there was a picture of 3 commands. I just want to copy that I want to take a photo of them, please, if you can do that for me, please. Thank you. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And the first one, you did it as well, please.
What is that, Prabhu? This one?
Yeah, that one, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. It was a very nice class. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else has got any reflections? So
I just wanted to ask you the question. There is one question. You know, Duryodhan was, Dhritarashtra was really blind because of the war, but wouldn't Dronacharya or Bhishma Pita object him to go for a war? Would that not be possible? Or would he not listen to that?
he wouldn't listen.
Oh, he would not listen.
He would not listen, no.
Oh,
Yeah. He was so covered over, he would not listen.
oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was thinking whether they would help him to overcome the war, you know.
It is said, Prabhu, if one, Krishna has given us all independence.
Yeah.
Sometimes if Krishna himself comes and gives us some good advice,
Okay.
if we are covered over,
Yeah.
and we are envious
All
of
right.
Krishna, we will not be able to accept that good advice.
Okay.
Yeah. So many people try to give good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even Krishna himself tried to stop the war.
Oh.
Yeah. He went before, tried to see whether he could stop, but they would not listen.
Oh.
Yeah.
So bad. Thank you.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I would just like to ask something. You know,
Yes,
when you said that Dhritarashtra, Pandav, and Vidurji were the children of Vyasdev. Now, does that mean Sukdev, Prabhuji, and these 3 brothers are half brothers as well? Because he was Vyasdeva's son as well. So I was
I
just
guess from
thinking about it.
Yes, Mataji, from one perspective, you can consider it like that. But if you look at it, principles of yoga, which I've set out there,
Yeah.
you know, no paternal relationships are deemed to be intact between the father who's conceiving. But in one sense, you can also say, yeah, maybe they have some relationships. Shukadev and
Interesting. Very interesting, Prabhuji. Thank you for that.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Puja Mataji.
Yes, is there any mention anywhere in the literature about how Dhritarashtra was as a king, as a ruler, apart from his partiality towards his sons? because he was a ruler of such a empire, a huge area, and he must have done some right decisions to get to that stage, being a ruler of a huge empire type.
I'm sure there is descriptions, Mataji. I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not aware of it, but I'm sure if you scrutinize the Vedic literatures, externally, someone could be a good manager. Just like sometimes you see some godless or some atheistic persons. They may be atheistic rulers of many countries, and externally it may seem that the country is prosperous. The country is doing well materially, but we understand that it is said in the Bhagavatam that if one is a non-devotee, that person can be deemed to not have any good qualities. But if one who is a devotee of the Lord, automatically he gets all of the good qualities of the demigods. So one may analyze Hastinapur, the kingdom under Dhritarashtra. It may appear that there was opulence and there was good rule. But the fact that he was envious of Krishna means it was a godless kingdom. And when there's a godless kingdom, at the core of that kingdom, there can never be any good. It could never be any good.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm unable to answer your question completely, Mataji, but if others have, through their readings, any comments on that, please feel free to express it.
But the answer is complete in a way that externally it may be anything, but he may still, as the non-devotee, he's a godless person. So I think that answers quite a lot.
Yeah, if you look at China at the moment, Puja Mataji, China is so prosperous. If you go to their big cities, it's full of opulence. There are big skyscraper buildings, shiny buildings, motorways, parks. Everyone is driving opulent cars. It would seem such good rulers, but all of them are atheists, devoid, and they try to suppress any inclination. So such kingdoms externally, they may appear, even Ravana, everything was made of gold. Shravana Lanka, golden Lanka, so prosperous. But what was the worth of that Lanka? What was the worth? Godless. Envy of Krishna. Hare Krishna. So Emma Mataji's got a comment here. Dhritarashtra's blindness teaches parents how detrimental it is to live their ambitions through their children. Nice comment, Emma Mataji. Nice comment. How detrimental.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, can you explain about, us being envious of Krishna? Because in this Kali Yuga, we seem to love him and adore him and worship him. So at what stage would we have been envious of him?
It's a good question, Mataji. It's a very good question. And this quality of envy, see, Krishna's position, he's the supreme enjoyer. And we as parts and parcels of Krishna, we are always meant to act for Krishna's enjoyment. That means at the forefront of our consciousness, at every moment, we must be thinking, what can I do to give pleasure to Krishna? How can Krishna be pleased with my action? And that is the consciousness of a devotee. At every minute thinking, how Krishna can be pleased with this action. That's the consciousness of a pure devotee. And simply by that action, that devotee experiences the greatest happiness, because by giving pleasure to Krishna, we experience the greatest pleasure. So we know from our own lives, how much is that in the forefront of our consciousness? Every of our actions, every of our thought. We are thinking more about, even in our own spiritual life. At the forefront of our mind, we're always thinking, will I be able to reach liberation at the end of this life? I am suffering so much in this material world. Let me get liberation. Even when it comes to spiritual life, our thoughts is still, in one sense, selfish, thinking I, me, and mine. And that is a very subtle consciousness, but that is the ultimate sign of envy. And the consciousness of a pure devotee at every moment, how Krishna can be pleased. How can I give pleasure to Krishna? That is the forefront of the consciousness. But I can speak for myself. I cannot speak for you, Pramila Mataji, but I know how far away I am from being a pure devotee, because my consciousness is so much away from thinking of Krishna's pleasure all the time. So many times I have to force myself to think of Krishna's pleasure, because I've been here for so many millions of lifetimes wanting to get pleasure for myself. Does that answer your question, Mataji?
Oh, perfect, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. All right. If there's no more questions or comments, we shall close today's session. I thank you all for attending and for your kind participation and your lovely questions. And we will conclude by reciting the Vaishnava pranams, offering our pranams to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord in attendance today. Vancha kalpa turubhyascha
Pratipadanan Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Anantakuri
Hare
Vaishnava
Krishna.
Ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, devotee. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.